Alrighty. Hello, everybody. So, as Danny just mentioned, my name is Caitlin Swanson, and I am super excited for the opportunity to be here and speak with you all today to share my story and how I play a part in being with you today. So, I am here representing Dwelo Smart Apartments, where I manage the one-stop shop support for all things software, hardware, and service platforms. My talk today is going to focus on the ups and downs, so to say, of scaling customer success, with a spoiler alert, a huge emphasis on data. Alrighty, but before I jump into the day-to-day of Dwelo, first I want to give you guys a little background on me and how I originally fell, quote unquote, into smart technology and the personal growth that I have had since. So I was 18 years old in community college and didn't know quite what path I wanted to take with my education or my career. I had just started dating my boyfriend at the time when he was offered a job with Vivint Smart Home as an installation technician and had to leave for the summer. Shortly after he left, I actually quit my job and followed. So I decided I would join the team and help him get more jobs done in a quicker manner. We thought it was a great idea, except I didn't have the first clue to what I was doing. I didn't know how to change a drill bit, let alone use the drill, but there I was figuring it out day by day. So I started out just helping, never taking on my own jobs, and after some literal blood, sweat, and tears, I was on my own, running wires and installing single-family smart home and security systems. So this lasted for about 3 years across various cities in the US until I mastered these smart products and gained confidence in my abilities. So this story brings me to the value of growth that I want to share today. So you cannot be an expert in something your first try, but as long as you stay engaged, apply, and push yourself to grow, look at problems as opportunities, you can work towards a bigger goal. Tying it back to my scenario, I did see results and was able to meet and exceed my goals, both professionally and personally. That single decision to choose to grow and learn instead of admitting defeat and choosing the easy route got me to the shoes I wear today. Without that decision, I would be living a much different life than I am today. So one little decision, a small change in a process, a tweak of a standard can make bigger impacts than it may appear. And this is a mindset I have held on to tightly again in both my personal and professional life. This is a mindset that I have held on to tightly again in both my personal and professional life. So after my time at Vivint, I stumbled upon Dwelo, where I joined the team as an installation technician, where I was excited to show the value I brought from my past and product expertise. So this led to me eventually joining the support team with an emphasis on the value that I could bring with my product knowledge. So at this point in time, Dwelo was really just starting to see growth. With my background, I was able to jump in and find gaps in our processes right away. And as we continued to grow, the gaps became more and more apparent, which created a need for a change in the outlook that we had. Before we could start approaching these pain points, COVID-19 hit, which forced us to change up the way we were supporting our customers, which helped to create this change in our outlook for us. And this is where the real growth and scaling came in. We went from scheduling technicians to fixing issues on site to servicing our products and softwares internally with customers remotely, which was a huge change in the mindset and needs of our support team.
Hey,
Overnight,
Caitlin, I apologize. I think you're still on the intro slide on the presentation here. Is that what you're seeing on your side?
yes, I'm just finishing up on this one and then I'll be on to the next one.
Apologies.
No worries. So overnight, we went from a basic customer care, so to speak, to a full technical support role. So this made it even more obvious that we needed a real change in our mindset. So this is where I come into the picture. With my product knowledge, it was very easy for me to switch over to a technical support role and really lead the rest of the team with these initiatives to help grow each individual to really understand the products, software, and service platforms end to end. And this is where the growth mindset played a huge part again. If people aren't accepting of change or growth, you will not make it very far. So this is a mindset we try to establish at Dwelo, to stay innovative, constantly improve, and communicate. This helps build the foundation of any team, department, or organization. You cannot scale anything without a solid foundation to fall back on. So take your time. The foundation is one of the keys to success here. Without one, it's easy for things to fall through the cracks and eventually crash and burn. So this has been my focus with my time with the support team and the growth that Dwelo has seen over the past couple of years. So now that you have the background to me and how I got to this role in Dwelo, I want to dive into the actual logistics of the tools and principles we have put into practice to help us continue to scale. First and foremost is data. Without data, you cannot know where your gaps are, your internal or external pain points, if a process is as efficient as it can be, or even your staffing needs. My first step was building out the department's data, really taking the time to understand it, which metrics affect one another, and finding the cadence that makes sense for your department's needs. A customer success team is not as data-oriented, so a monthly basis makes more sense. But support is full of numerical data that can be broken down any which way: daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, etc. However, compiling the data is just the tip of the iceberg. You can look at numbers and data points all day long, but they aren't as meaningful until you set a target to each metric. Creating this push to get a metric to where you want it to be and showing if you are winning or losing against this target is where the real value comes in. So Dwelo has used a system called daily Kaizen, or continuous improvement, to put this into practice. Continuous improvement, by definition, is the ongoing improvement of products, services, or processes through incremental and breakthrough improvements. So the origin of this Kaizen continuous improvement in business occurred in Japan shortly after the end of World War II. So the approach and method that I have taken with my team here at Dwelo breaks the continuous improvement down into 4 parts. 1 being create the gap, 2, show the gap, 3, close the gap, and 4, tune the engine. So creating the gap. Ask yourself, what does it mean to win at every level in the organization? We should be asking ourselves this question all the time. Chances are the meaning of winning to you, your department, your business will evolve. We might also ask, how do we create value for our customers? For example, in customer service, does value mean high CSAT scores, quick first reply times? In customer success, is it high engagement? Once we know what creates the value for our customers, we know the game that we are playing and the part that we play in the business. So how do we win? In other words, if we quantify winning, what does it look like? This becomes the scoreboard. Equipped with a clear game and a scoreboard, we are ready to play and be engaged. Because you can't win if you don't know what you're playing for, unless you just get lucky. And then lastly, we should be asking, is it clear at all levels? Do we know what winning means at the department level, the team level, the individual level? As I just went over, it must be clear at all levels, because we can't hold somebody accountable for losing a game they didn't know how to play. Which brings me to show the gap. So this is where we ask, are we winning or are we losing? And this is where a KPI dashboard comes in handy. Can team members see at a glance whether we are winning or losing against those outcomes? It should be very easy for all levels of the organization to be able to 1, quickly access the data, 2, understand the data, and 3, know if they are on track from those goals. So again, if you ask the team what winning means, do they know what the target is? Do they know where to find the score? Which brings me to close the gap. So we should be asking, what actions can I take on a daily basis to win? Every person on your team should be asking this question on a daily occurrence. What can an individual or the team do to move a target from red to green, a CSAT from a 4 to a 5? Putting this into practice can and will look differently for different teams. So as a leader, you may ask, does every team member come to meetings and take actions to help win? Do they dependably fulfill their commitments? And if so, are they engaged? Do they contribute to the discussion, or do they passively participate? Do they take initiative to contemplate during the week and come to the meetings prepared with ideas? There is no right answer. You just have to do and look at the successes and failures and find what works best for your team, your department, your business. My approach in a nutshell has been team-oriented, coming together, having accountability as a team, but each individual taking an active role. I currently have a daily team meeting where we rotate reviewing important metrics and have team members take actions each week. Each team member owns one of these metrics and lead the meeting, trying to get engagement from their fellow team members. This helps to create a new level of engagement where they are responsible for the metric and finding creative ways to engage their fellow team members. We also have a weekly meeting with a select group of team members who focus on our strategic goals, again, taking actions to work towards a bigger goal. For me and my team, this cadence has worked great for us. The team is able to bounce ideas off of one another in both scenarios and talk through different ideas on how they would impact the metric of focus. This really creates a deeper understanding of the game, so to speak, and forces your employees to be players on the court instead of fans in the stand. Which brings me to the final step, which is tuning the engine. So how can we as leaders help our teams win more often? Are we regularly taking action to sustain and improve the culture of engagement and overall system? Is the team's approach regularly evolving to stay fresh and relevant? Are we helping to guide them and create a creative space for them to voice their ideas and not be scared to speak up? And lastly, are we celebrating the wins and creative ideas? This is a very important motivator. If you do not celebrate the wins, you will without a doubt lose your engagement. We could save the company at least $10,000 a month. And we did just that. So to celebrate this win, I spent a couple $100 on a virtual murder mystery activity where we all dressed up and enjoyed the activity and the opportunity to blow off some steam as a team. The team loved this activity and it really engaged them to want to take on more action and improve even more. So if we didn't take the time to celebrate this win, they wouldn't have known the impact that they made on the company and the amount of money that they helped to save each month. So the last question you should be asking as a leader are what coaching opportunities are required to elevate these team members and increase the impact that they can make? So are we regularly coaching them and improving their skills? Because coaching teams through this is very important. You cannot expect a culture or a mindset change like this overnight. It needs to be coached and regularly talked about. As well as coaching them into seeing what can make the most impact, we do not want to spend 20 hours working on something that's going to make a 1% difference. But if we can work on something for 2 hours that will make a 20% difference, that is where we should focus our time and resources. So the importance of engaging your team members. So how can we get them playing the game instead of watching from the sidelines? Once you are a player on the court, you are much more engaged in the outcome and scoreboard of the game. So this helps to create the push to move these metrics from losing to winning. So this is the most important piece of the system. You can do all the above steps, build your metrics, show them on a regular cadence, but if your team members are not engaged, you will not see actions being taken or improvements being implemented. So this can be the toughest part as a leader, and it was for myself. Introducing this to a team and telling them to find areas to improve, literally asking the question, what do you not like about your current practices or processes? People can be hesitant to quote unquote complain about their current situation or even pay attention to these potential pain points. It just gets lumped into a bad process or just the way that it is. So you have to teach them to engage inside their normal day-to-day and put on their waist goggles, so to speak. And once you create that safe space for them to come with ideas, not be afraid to fail, the ideas will come. And from my experience, team members are able to surface waste most leaders would have never known about. Because usually as leaders, you can be far away from the day-to-day processes and pain points that team members can be going through. So myself, I really lean on the engagement of my team and help to push their actions across the finish line. They know best what takes them longer than it should, what automations can speed up their processes, etc. So helping to steer them in a realistic direction and get new initiatives or actions implemented and celebrating those wins is what we as leaders are responsible for in this game. If you can create this space for them, the engagement will be endless. So now that we have gone through the steps on how to play the game, I want to go over a few more concepts that help to create even more value in the game that we are playing. So I want to go over the 8 wastes. So kind of going back to those waste goggles I referenced, there is waste everywhere once you open your eyes to it. And there are 8 common wastes that you can search for in your day-to-day. One being a defect, so any mistake or shortcoming in the product or experience. 2, overproduction, making more than is needed or wanted. This can be features, reports, trainings, etc. Number 3, waiting for items or information to arrive. Number 4, transportation, unnecessary movements of items from one place to another. Could also be unnecessary travel. Number 5 is non-utilized talent. So, underutilizing the skills and talents of your team members. Number 6 is inventory or work in progress. So, those are things that we have started but not completed. Number 7 is motion, so unnecessary movements, keystrokes, etc. And last but not least, excess processing, duplicate, redundant, or wasteful steps. Alrighty, so the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto system, is a perfect example of this. So this is a concept that asserts that 80% of outcomes or outputs result from 20% of all causes or inputs. You can use many different approaches to this rule, but I have leaned my focus towards two main types of metrics. One being a primary metric, which is a metric of particular importance that requires regular and focused attention to improve performance. These may transition back to secondary metrics once targets have been achieved. And secondly, are secondary metrics, a metric that provides a balanced and holistic picture of the performance of a team. They differ from primary metrics in that they typically do not require regular action unless they dip below their target line. You can look at these as in a state of cruise control. And there are two main reasons for a secondary metric. One being to give us a balanced view of performance and sustain the gains. And two, to round out primary metrics and ensure that primary metrics are not achieved by sacrificing performance in another area. For example, becoming more efficient at the expense of the quality. So it is very important to go through your metrics and assign them as either primary, secondary, or context. This will help you determine where your focus needs to be, and using the 80-20 rule, focusing on little improvements that can make a big impact. You then put these to practice. Primary metrics are metrics that should be reviewed with your team on a daily, weekly, bi-weekly basis, depending on your needs. These are the metrics that team members should be focusing on and taking actions to improve on. So one more concept that I want to talk about is Little's Law, which is a simple equation of process lead time equaling work in progress divided by the exit rate. So put simply, Little's Law is an equation showing the average number of customers in a queuing system, which is equal to their average arrival rate, multiplied by the average amount of time they spend in a queuing system. So this law is a very valuable tool for many different reasons, but for me, I have used it for my staffing needs. If we know we have 100 tickets in our work in progress, and we average 10 tickets a day, our process lead time will be 10 days. If we want to increase our exit rate to 20 tickets a day, we need to add another staff member or use our continuous improvement system to find waste in our processes so we can increase our exit rate to 20 with the same staff that averaged the 10 tickets for their exit rate. So putting this into another example, in Starbucks. So if you are the 11th person in line and they are serving each person every minute, it'll be 11 minutes until you get your coffee from the simple equation of the number of people in line divided by the number of people served per minute. So like I mentioned, you can use this equation for so many different scenarios, but for me, we use this to break down what each team member will need to complete in a day to meet our goals. If we have 5 team members and want to get 100 tickets done each day, each team member needs to complete a minimum of 20 tickets a day, and you can even break that down further by the hour. So this is a very valuable equation that can be used in any queue-based scenario. It's also a great exercise to go through to find how you can use Little's Law in your day-to-day and how it can bring value to you and your teams. So lastly, I want to take you through the last few points in my talk today, which surround quality principles. So every company has their own unique definition of quality, but universally, the customer is at the heart and the customer defines what quality is. Understanding and following foundational quality principles is the only way we can build a magical customer experience in a scalable and sustainable way. The outcomes are designed into the process. We should not be relying on testing at the end of the line to catch defects. As well, a well-designed process can take average talent and get above average performance. So a good example is McDonald's. They're constantly churning out burgers across the country from young teenagers. And the third quote here are...
I apologize, Kaylin. It did the thing again. It's having some kind of issue where it's popping your screen share right off.
No worries.
And then We're a little over, so we'll be starting the next talk by Carrie Siggins in a little bit. So we're flexible and just remain patient. Thank you, everybody.
Is it showing my screen backwards?
Nope, we're still seeing your camera. So I think if you just, there's a screen share button on, yeah, I think you got it.
Yeah,
There we go. Perfect.
Alrighty, so the third quote here are problems are not people issues, they are process issues. So since the process is responsible for the results, every problem that arises is an opportunity to improve a process. So people are not the issue. Even seemingly human mistakes are almost always opportunities to improve a process, even if it's the process of training employees or clarifying expectations. So where humans are prone for mistakes, for example, typos in an email, the process should be designed to catch and repair the mistakes, and as a result, it still comes down to the process. And the last quote here are problems are pearls. So taking a process approach means that you only have to fix each problem once. Then the problem goes away indefinitely. So with this mindset, problems are valuable pearls that point us to where the process needs improvement. These problems should be embraced and surfaced without any finger pointing. They point the way to perfection. So an example of this process mindset I have used is problems are not people issues, they are process issues. So we had a scenario where an employee wasn't getting up to the speed in the way that we would have liked them to. Instead of blaming it on the person, we revisited the onboarding or training materials and realized we weren't setting them up for success with the process we had in place. We then revisited the training, restructured and organized the content, and our next round of hires came up to speed the quickest in the history of our support team. Which brings me to standardizing the process. So a problem is a deviation from a standard. If you don't have a standard, you don't have a problem. So the first question you should ask anyone who talks about a quality problem is there a standard in place? We ask this because defects generally fall into one of three buckets. One being no standard, two being the standard not followed, and three being the standard needs improved. So this was a gap that was shown to me with my team and our processes. Being a startup, standards aren't usually the first thing that get implemented. However, as you continue to scale, it is very important to take the time to create these standards because, like stated above, if there's no standard, there's no problem. How do you hold an employee accountable to a standard that doesn't exist? The next principle I want to go over is quality at the source. So quality at the source means that each employee is held responsible for ensuring the quality of products. This is accomplished with the following tools. Use a high level of documentation and training to ensure that each product is manufactured the same way every time. So quality output is not just measured at the end of the process, but throughout the process. So again, if inspection's happening at the end of the process as the primary means of quality assurance, that's a bad sign. The focus is mistakenly on a quality product as opposed to a quality process. So quality requires instilling a sense of ownership and responsibility for each person involved along the way. Quality is everyone's job. We should not pass on a defect to the next person. And mistake proofing, which I'm going to dive into on this next slide, is an effective way to build quality into the process. So before I do that, we recently had a quality issue here at Dwelo with our software that was not caught until the products were in the customer's hands. This is a perfect example of mistake proofing not being built into our process and was a great exercise to see the amount of waste and extra cost that was produced from this mistake. So again, mistake proofing is the idea and execution of designing a process in a way that defects are hard to produce or are easily identified. There are three levels to this concept. Level one being the prevention, which checklists, testing, etc. So as we all know, mistakes can be expensive, especially when they get further down the production line. It is worth the extra time, the extra money up front to design mistake proofing into your processes, which tees me up to my next and final principle, which is the cost of poor quality.
And right before that, share your screen again because it keeps popping out. Apologies.
Okay. Alrighty, so there are 4 general types of quality costs. So 1 being the prevention, so upfront efforts to avoid these quality defects. 2 being the appraisal, the inspection and testing of these products. 3 being the internal failures, so those are defects that are discovered before they reach the customer. And lastly, external failures, which are defects that are discovered after they reach the customer. So a good rule here that I like to reference is the 1-10-100 rule. So as work moves through a process, the cost of correcting an error increases by a factor of 10. So a little quote there, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So essentially, the rule states that prevention is less costly than failure. It makes more sense to invest $1 in prevention than to spend $10 on correction. The rule explains how failure to take notice of one cost escalates the loss in terms of dollars. And hidden costs of poor quality are far greater than most recognize. For example, say we manufacture TVs. You pay for the cost for it to be manufactured and shipped to the customer. This customer also paid for one of your technicians to come and install the TV. Technician arrives on the job, spends 2 hours mounting and installing the TV for the screen to be broken when they turn it on. We lost the cost of manufacturing, shipping, and installation, and will now have to pay doubles on all of those costs because mistake proofing was not built into the process. There was no check to ensure this TV was in working order before shipping it out, which cost more money in the long run compared to what it would have costed to add one more check in your production line.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. And sorry to cut you short, but our next speaker has to jump on a plane in 20 minutes. So I was wondering if we could, since we're about 10 minutes over due to technical difficulties, if we could, oh, perfect. Okay, so we'll wrap up right here.
Perfect. So to conclude, I want to call out that I have only put this into practice for the last year. The first 6 months were a lot of legwork, building the process and data, and finding what worked best for my team and I. I am still no expert. We are still learning every day, learning how to interact better with our fellow departments, and even building the continuous improvement mindset down to the individual level. We've been using this process for a year, but we are only getting started. We are now a team of players versus fans in the stands. And now that we have built this foundation, we can really dive into bigger initiatives and continue to take actions and study our data week after week. So doing so in the last year, we have saved the company on average $10,000 a month, which equals to roughly $100,000 in reoccurring margins over the year. We have found creative solutions to remotely resolve common customer issues while still keeping the quality of service high and improving processes to ensure we are meeting our SLAs. The improvements never stop, especially in the IoT and SaaS worlds. Things are always evolving, and thus, so do the processes and employees. Staying innovative and finding ways to solve the customer's issues before they come to you is key. And I just want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope that you all can take something away from this and put these methods and principles into practice, however it may fit into each of your worlds. Check it out.